Welcome to the I and Thou video series. And today, sitting at the table with me is John F. Kennedy.
Hi,
Welcome.
Richard. Thank you.
Do you know about this video series at all?
I don't. I've never knew that you were doing this.
It's kind of a way that I can sit down with somebody and we can interview each other.
Oh, okay.
I want to start with something that I was writing today.
Okay.
Okay. I think that the world is made up of the fictional and the real. So, for example, I was talking to somebody about the film The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly.
One of my favorites, yes.
You know, the scene where Eli Wallach is about to be hung. He's on the horse. He's got the rope around his neck.
Yeah.
Clint Eastwood shoots the rope.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's the fictional version. In the real version, there was a tiny bit of explosive inside the rope with a remote control, and a technician pressed the button and it made it explode and it caused the rope to break. So
yes.
There's a difference then between the real and the fictional. Now, Bertolt Brecht, the director, I'm sure you're familiar with him, he used to keep the house lights on during his plays so the audience would be reminded, hey, you're watching a play. Don't forget about that. So let's not push the real too far into the background. All right, let's keep that on our minds. So, I was reading about Jean Baudrillard and something that he said recently. He said, Disneyland is a place that people can point to and say, I can clearly see a fictional world. This must mean that everything that's not Disneyland is real. Now, if I were ever talking to Baudrillard, I would say this. There's a fictional world inside of each one of our minds that we've been raised with. Clint Eastwood shooting the rope.
Mm-hmm.
All right? And you inhabit that world much more than you do when you go to Disneyland because it's in your mind all the time. It's like your private Disneyland. But the thing is, it's very difficult to know when you're standing inside the fictional world and it is controlling the way you see the real world. And I'll give you an example of what I'm talking about here. On the news on Monday, somebody thought they were stepping on a brake, but they were stepping on the gas, and their car went into a laundromat. Okay. Everybody's diving out of the way. It's going all the way through to the end of the laundromat. And of course, the news loves those things. They love it when they like two things, giant sinkholes and when a car goes into a building. They'll always cover those things. So they go and they were talking to one of the people who dove out of the way. And this is what the person said. It was like a movie. I could not believe that it was real. So I thought of that and I said, wow, this woman's got two sections in her mind. The section of the movies and the section of the real. And she just saw something in the real, but it didn't compute because the only time she's ever seen it before is in the section of the movies. Mm-hmm. So, that is my thought to open up this discussion.
Well,
is there a fictional world in your mind that influences the way you see the real world?
It reminds me of the story I heard. The movie Fargo, the Coen brothers movie. Mm-hmm. In the beginning of the movie, as a joke, they put, this is a true story. There was a woman from Japan who watched the movie, and in the movie, Steve Buscemi's character, he buries the loot, the money, along this long fence on the road in the snow, and then marks it with like the thing like that he had.
Ice scraper.
The ice scraper. This woman actually went out to Fargo found a fence probably similar to what she saw in the movie and searched until she actually died. She perished looking for this money. Now that is this is a true story, that she actually died looking for this money that she saw buried from a film. You got to ask yourself, you've heard it a million times, well, you saw it on the internet, so it must be real. I think this concept has grown to a dangerous level in this country because of the apparent lack of leadership we have now in the Oval Office. Is all based upon this concept of what is real and what is fake. And how many times have we heard those who make the fake statements call everything else that's real or truthful fake? So we're in this double speak type of world now that is dictated in a lot of ways from the media that we've seen going back to, Good, Bad, and the Ugly was made the year that I was born, 52 years ago, or 51 years ago, close to 52 years ago. And for me to have grown up in this media world, I think about my daughter, who's now 23, having grown up in that much more of an advanced media world in which at kindergarten she was on a computer and is fluent in computer, as most children of that era are. And a lot of them, because of the communication ability now in the technology, have an overload of information from every aspect of everything in the world, and it's probably pretty tough for them to decipher what is real and what is fake because of the lack of, I don't want to call it, I would have to say filtering more than censoring. There is no filters anymore. This is a filterless society, and technology has grown so immensely in comparison to understanding, or law maybe, when it comes to information. Communication has grown. I think as the communication technology advances has caused what happened in the Middle East, because these folks who have never seen, before they got their cell phones and technology, the easy access to the other worlds, how good it was in other countries. And these young kids were the ones who pushed this whole Arab Spring, wanted it. They wanted that because of that information overload. They know what they want because they see that it's a reality somewhere else in the world. Caused a lot of strife, caused a lot of people saying, hey, that's enough, let's move on. And then, of course, sadly, it all kind of came to an end because they didn't have the older generations buying in, basically. And then they turn everything backwards to the Stone Ages again, and then wars start. And so it is amazing what you're saying there of reality in comparison to not reality or the fake world.
Our friend Paula has an interesting theory that ties into something you said, but she draws a different conclusion. She says that people around the world see what all these other cultures do, and they feel that it threatens their own culture. And they start to hate these other cultures, not desire them.
Yep.
Can you see any validity in that? Like, doesn't ISIS hate American culture, or does ISIS want American culture?
I think it has a lot more based on fear of what they don't know. Because they were pretty quick to learn how to use an internet, how to induct people through the internet. I mean, we all wanted a free and open internet, but now we have to have a censored internet because we don't want that type of thought radicalizing youth. I'm just, I don't know. I mean, I think they're pretty quick to take on our communications, even though they have their own message to put out there. So they're, in a way, beating you at your own game. So I don't think that they would hate us for the technology end as much as they don't want the power taken away from them, especially when it comes to male-female relationships, which controls pretty much everybody in a lot of ways. I mean, I'm not going to say everybody because not everybody is involved with a female-male. I'm just saying that relationships are, especially in the world that they grew up in say Afghanistan, everybody had their place. And now with this information overload coming into that fixed society, of course there's going to be pushback by those who have the power.
Now, you mentioned the importance of male-female relationships.
Yeah.
As you have evolved in your life, are you clear as to what are the boundaries in male-female relationships? How much power women should have, how much power men should have? Or has it been a confusing journey for you?
Personally, for me, I grew up in a large family. I'm the youngest of 13 children, mostly brothers. And I got to say, the strongest person who she's still alive is my mother. You know, having 13 children, she's 93 now, had a career. And my father was strong too. I mean, don't get me wrong, he was a war hero, but Mom, you know, she was the backbone. You know, she was the and still is the strength in the family. And then I look at, and I've always said I'm a history teacher. I'm a social studies teacher by trade, and so American history and the matriarch systems in the Native American society, because of that same reason of being the mother is the female is the backbone of every family, and without families there is no society. So I've always respected the fact that women definitely have more power than men. I always have. I mean, they control the love. The men are there to protect, to be a part of, in which is kind of gone askew sometimes with a lot of with folks in poverty, unfortunately. But I'm just in generalities as I'm thinking about relationships, which I'm not very good at, and I can't really say I have in my life personally. But I'm just saying, from just being a social thinker, I think that especially having grown up in the '70s, the whole civil rights movement for women, and I've noticed that there are of course folks that go too far with whatever rights they want by taking other people's rights away from them. So that, I mean, there could be a power struggle in society, but I think that everybody has that equal, as Americans, that equal right to push for rights for themselves and for others. It's just that be careful not to take the rights away from others, you know, and take away their roles, I guess. I mean, because if you have a man that has no role in life, then there's going to be problems. Which I think, once again, going back to this misogynist president that we have, has really bolstered or actually went after that concept of you're being emasculated, men. It's time to put women back in their place. And I really have noticed this throughout that whole election of just body language.
Oh, plus some of the other candidates, he was making fun of the way they looked.
Exactly. And then the infamous video of, you know, the old pussy grabbing video, and that has put this country back. It has set, as amongst the millions of other things that are going on, that I think is definitely something that has pushed, or is an attempt to push our society backwards. And I guess that's, if you can, you know, I'm trying to get it out as very carefully as possible, because, you know, I don't want to be offensive towards anybody, but I think that that people who believe that women should get paid less than men, for instance, I mean, that's just, I mean, that's unfair. If you're doing the same job, you should get paid the same. It doesn't matter what color, creed, anything. If you're doing the job and you're doing it well, you should get paid the same. And that Ledbetter Act that came out just showed how far we really need to go with people in this country when it comes to equal pay for equal work in that realm. But on the other hand, between men and women relationship, we should also respect our roles in society as well, and not try to skew them so much that it kind of puts a lot of people into a position where they don't know where they're going to go. So general respect for each other, and I think most people do have general respect, but I'm just saying every once in a while you see it that is a little bit going a little bit too far in certain areas.
Now, you said that you wouldn't consider yourself an expert in relationships because you've had some that weren't successful.
Yes.
And was that something where you decided to end the relationships, or they were ended by the other person and you didn't see it coming?
Well, I don't want to generalize all of them because I've had my share. But yeah, I think it was mutual in a lot of ways. Some relationships I still have, such as my ex-wife and I, because we have a daughter. Mm-hmm. So we are in a relationship as parents and try and be the best parents we possibly can be and have been for our daughter. Mm-hmm. But on the other hand, if you don't have that with others, then yeah, it's pretty much a clean break, and you know. But as for other people, my parents have been married for so long that they look alike. I mean, they've been together 69 years.
Were they surprised when you told them that a divorce was coming?
No, because I wasn't the first one in my family that was divorced. So, I mean,
they didn't try to like intervene and like act as referees, did they?
No, I think they learned their lesson from doing that earlier and with other brothers and sisters. So I don't think that it was that big of a surprise for them. But on the other hand, we still were there for my daughter, and that was what was important to them, as it was to us as parents and grandparents.
Now, what advice would you give to people who are just getting married as to the pitfalls that might lead to a divorce down the road?
I would say more than anything, give each other space and respect each other. I mean, respect is everything. And trust each other. Trust is huge. As in any relationship with anybody, you have to be able to trust them.
You mean that they're not cheating on you, or?
In every aspect, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Work as a team and not trying to snipe each other. You know, I mean, you got to be able to know that they're going to be there for you.
Mm.
Because if you don't, then you know that just makes a person uncomfortable, I think.
Is everything raising the daughter with two parents that are divorced? Does that seem to be working okay when you look at your daughter and see the way that she's growing and developing? Because I know people where sometimes one of the parties will say to the kid something negative about the other, and then you'll hear it from the child, and you'll say, I have a feeling I know who said that to her.
Well, I think we're all human, and I think we all lived on a learning curve throughout the whole thing. But you know, more than anything, Richard, I think that what's really, really important in not just relationships but life is the ability to forgive. It's such a healing thing. Mm-hmm. Especially, you know, when you're carrying around, and I did for a long time carry around a lot of hate or anger, and it was just ripping me up. I mean, for long years, almost a decade, and then finally, you know, I just thought, you know, why am I doing this? I mean, I read something about forgiveness. It never really occurred to me. You know, having grown up religious and everything, and I know, you know, the religion is supposed to be all about forgiveness, but you don't really listen to it because, you know, you're a kid. But, you know, but when you really think about it, it's healing. You forgive yourself, you forgive other people, whether they want it or not, just so that you can relieve yourself of that burden. And when I did it, boy, it was physical. I mean, I felt like that weight just literally lift off my shoulders.
It sounds like you even remember the day that it happened.
In a way, yeah. It was just, you know, and it's not like it was the last time someone did something, you know, bad, or it was like a relationship didn't end. But, you know, having learned from that in itself, it really helped me to get through other things and just keep moving on and do new things. And because if you don't do that, I mean, it eats you up. It eats you up. And that's, you know, and then people turn to the bottle or drugs or whatever because they're so angry they have to fill that hole. That anger is like opening up inside you. It could turn into a really downward spiral for a person unless they're able to, you know, think about it, and especially with a child. Because I know that more than anything, that anger really affected my kid. So when that all ended, I think that's when things really was better for my daughter. And she took charge of her own life and did well and went to college and is now graduated. And, you know, she was, you know, she's a productive human being now. You know, she's out there doing her thing, and I'm very proud of her, always have been. And that's something also very important for everybody to say to their kids, that they're proud of them, because it does mean a lot. Whether their kid like looks at you like you're crazy or not, you know. I mean, it's one thing to be, you know, you love your kid unconditionally, but to also be proud of your kid is very important, I think. You know, I think more of us should have had people tell us that they're proud of them, you know, but you know, it doesn't always happen because it doesn't always occur to everybody to think of, you know. I don't know.
I have a friend, and she said that when she was breaking up with her boyfriend and there was a lot of anger in the air, suddenly the cats in the house stopped eating. Oh, yeah. She thinks they picked up on this negativity. Possible?
Absolutely.
That would be similar to what you were saying.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Now, I was talking to my friend the other day. Very interesting discussion. Very interesting. He said when he was in his early 20s, he had a very close friend. They did everything together, him and his friend. And one day he said to his friend Dave, why don't we try an experiment? you tell me everything that's wrong with me on how I could be a better person and what all my flaws are. And then I'll tell you what all your flaws are. All the things that I don't like about you, etc. So they did this little experiment, and they grew estranged little by little after that. So he asked me for my interpretation of that. Here's what I told him. I said, you know, that's a common activity in cults. If you want to be in the cult, you have got to go to all the people that you know in the world, and you have to have them criticize you, and you have to make a list of all the things they tell you that are bad about you, and then you bring that back to the cult. But I said, let me give you my reading on what you did with your friend, all right? There is a famous argument in the history of philosophy. It started in I don't even want to tell you when, it was just so far back. It goes like this. God is that which is perfect. And most people would agree with it. Yeah, God is that which is perfect. And then you say, what is the most perfect thing you can imagine? If you imagine a perfect being, and I imagine a perfect being, but my perfect being exists, isn't mine more perfect than yours because yours is in the imagination and mine exists? That was an argument for the existence of God.
Yeah.
God is a perfect being, and in order to be perfect, the perfect being must exist, otherwise it's not truly perfect. But nobody would stand up to that argument because the church was so powerful and say, you know, the imagination is really where perfection lies. It doesn't lie in reality. It lies in imagination. Okay, so I said to my friend, do you realize what you two were doing? You were playing like a Christianity game with each other. You were saying, let's play the game, Lord, I am a sinner. I am not worthy. And you play God and tell me how I'm a sinner. And then I'll play God and I'll tell you how you are a sinner. And I said that you had this concept in your minds that you both could be perfect. In other words, you could be this imaginary state.
I think that's one of the biggest flaws in human society, is no one can really see the beauty of imperfection. Because there is such a beauty in imperfection.
Raise your mic a little.
I took up this concept as an artist, is the beauty of imperfection. I look at
weight off my shoulders.
Exactly.
We're another movie, but
No. I think that everybody strives in this country to be so perfect, and it American exceptionalism, I think, comes from that concept. And American exceptionalism is a myth, because we're only exceptional if we can be humble and admit to our imperfections.
You know, there is in the earlier days of the internet, there were these things. There were chat rooms. And you could go and people would talk about these things. Remember those things?
Yeah.
There was a chat room of people from Austria, all right?
Yeah.
And I went in it, and a lot of them were conversing in English.
Okay.
And one of the things I thought that was funny is people were saying, I am so sick of hearing what a terrific country Austria is, how we are the most free country in the world, how we are the most tolerant, and how we have the bravest people. And I thought, where have I heard that before?
It's that exceptionalism. It's and people would be mad at me for saying these things because they think that we're Americans, so we're the best. I look at that as being the ugly American. And we have a perfect example of that in the White House. Once again, it goes back to this because this is the culmination of this American so-called fictional exceptionalism. We're Americans. We're made of everybody else in the world. we all have somewhere in our family not too long ago sometime. I mean, my mother's father's family was here since the Mayflower.